Nancy Martin. I work for the Pennsylvania Resources Council, and I want to thank the City of Pittsburgh, the Bureau of Environmental Services for inviting PRC to participate this evening, and I'd also like to thank Construction Junction for offering us this nice venue for the program. I'd like to thank Blender, the organization that kind of pulled all of this together, and I'd like to thank our panelists, and let me tell you who they are. They will introduce themselves later and tell you about their office and what they do there, but they are Maura Egler. She is Chief of Staff in the office of the Pittsburgh City Council person, Erica Strausberger's office, Rebecca Kiernan, the Principal Resilience Planner, Sustainability and Resilience Division at the City of Pittsburgh, and Theresa Bradley, who just stepped out, I think, for an interview. She's the Recycling Supervisor at the Bureau of Environmental Services in the City of Pittsburgh. So those are our panelists tonight. We're very appreciative that they're here. They'll have answers for your questions after we look at some basic facts. And I want to thank you folks for coming this evening and being interested and passionate about recycling, so that's encouraging. As you all know, recycling's in a transitional phase right now, but it always has been. Recycling has just been evolving and changing over the years. You know, when my children were little, we had no curbside, and we separated everything, source separated, and about once a month took it somewhere. So things have changed greatly. They're still changing, so that's normal, and hopefully with your help and input, we can come up with some great ways to move forward with recycling, make it more efficient and more meaningful. Okay, so what we'll do tonight is take a look at a few slides, just get some recycling basics, who, what, why, when, where, and how of recycling, and then we will turn it over to our panelists. So try to remember your questions or jot them down during the presentation. We will ask questions after the presentation, if that's all right with you folks. So tonight we're talking about putting waste in its place, but I have a problem with the word waste because our recyclables are not waste. They are actually very valuable resources that have come from natural resources, and so it isn't waste. And as you'll see later, most of what we're sending to landfills has no business being in a landfill. For those of you who aren't familiar with PRC, the organization for which I work, PRC is one of the oldest environmental nonprofits in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We were founded in 1939. We grew out of a garden club in the Philadelphia area. In those days, we were the Pennsylvania Roadside Council, and our mission revolved largely, well, our mission was preserving the scenic beauty of the state. We did a lot of anti-billboard work and just preserving the scenic beauty, anti-litter work, litter prevention. Over the years, our mission has expanded. We're working on a new mission statement, but basically it's preserving and conserving the state's natural resources. In around 1950, we created our mascot, the litter bug, and coined the motto, "Don't be a litter bug." We have a Pittsburgh office that's very active, and the Pittsburgh office focuses largely on solid waste reduction. So we do a lot of recycling and composting work, other things as well, but our main focus is recycling and composting, I would say. And so, in line with that, some of our programs are household hazardous waste and hard-to-recycle collection events in the spring, summer, and fall for things that you can't recycle curbside and that you're not to put in the trash curbside. We also do some recycling bin giveaways in selected neighborhoods, and there should be one of those coming up sometime in the not too distant future. Zero Waste Pennsylvania is another one of our programs. It certifies events both large and small as zero waste. So for example, the Pittsburgh Marathon, Three Rivers Art Festival, those are big events, but a small event like this or a birthday party could be a zero waste event. At the art festival and those larger events, all of the vendors need or must use fully compostable knives, forks, spoons, cups, so that everything's fully compostable and certified as such. We do a lot of adult community workshops on composting, recycling, watershed awareness, rain barrels, lots of in-school program, and other programs as well. So that's who we are, and we're very happy to be here this evening talking about recycling. Some of the reasons for reducing, reusing, and recycling are to save landfill space. We don't want to fill Pennsylvania up with landfills. We currently are said to import more trash than any other state because we have low tipping fees, so we don't want to fill the place up with landfills. landfills. There are many problems associated with landfilling. We also like to recycle to conserve natural resources, to extend the life of our natural resources, to keep our region beautiful, to protect our groundwater and our surface water, to reduce the methane emissions from the landfills, and to reduce plastic pollution. This is what a landfill looks like, kind of a cutaway view. So it's a huge hole in the ground. Usually there's a clay liner, a thick rubber liner, and two sets of pipes, one to carry the methane gas up to the top, and one to collect the leachate, the toxic liquid that collects in the bottom of the landfill, and that is pumped up to ground level as well. The gas can be sold to the gas company, sometimes burned off on site, and sometimes it's used on site. And the leachate can be treated on site, sometimes shipped off to a landfill for more toxic materials. So eventually, the landfill is full of trash, then it mounds up and becomes a big hill. There's a plastic cap, some soil, some grass, and that's pretty much it. You can't do much on a site of a landfill. Things don't really break down or decompose in a landfill. The conditions necessary for decomposition to take place are not present in a landfill. So they've taken core samples where they've gone down to where things were placed 50 years ago, and you can still read the newspaper. So things aren't breaking down in landfills. So another reason to try to send less material to landfills. It's said that if everyone were to recycle everything that one can recycle and compost everything that one can compost, we could reduce the amount of material we're sending to our landfills by over 75%. And that's easy to see. I'll show you a pie chart in a minute that shows you what we're currently sending to the landfill. Landfills are very huge, so one of the problems is just habitat destruction. This is the Imperial Landfill outside of Pittsburgh. It's 2,300 acres. When I heard that, I found that a little hard to believe, so I looked it up, and indeed it is true. All of these red dots are landfills in southwestern Pennsylvania. We only have 3 green dots. Those are recycling facilities. So we have Recycle Source in Hazelwood, Waste Management's Recycling Center on Neville Island, and Vogel has a recycling center in Butler County. So I'd like to see that reversed. More recycling, less landfilling. I mentioned conserving natural resources is one of the reasons for recycling, extending the life of our natural resources. Every time we need another aluminum can, we don't have to dig up the earth for more bauxite ore, make more aluminum, which is very energy intensive. An aluminum can be recycled thousands of times. So we're good on aluminum. And this pie chart is showing you the municipal solid waste generated in 2015, very similar today. And if you take a look at that chart, this blue area is paper and paperboard, about 26%. That could be composted or recycled. And then other materials, glass, metal, plastic, yard trimmings, food, wood, textiles. All of these things are recyclable or compostable and have no business being in a landfill. They are valuable resources. So, it's said that we purchase about 1 million plastic bottles every minute. So I want to show you what 2 million plastic bottles looks like, because just to kind of put things in perspective. So we'll back out, and then we'll back out again every 2 minutes. So there's something to be said for carrying your reusable water bottle or your coffee mug or whatever the case may be. That's one very simple thing that we can all do. Recycling in Pittsburgh is single stream, as it is in most places in the United States, just simply meaning that we mix everything together in the same container, and then later it goes to a recycling center where it has to be sorted out. That can lead to problems. Recycling began in 1988 in Pennsylvania with Act 101, the Municipal Waste Planning, Recycling, and Waste Reduction Act, that requires that municipalities with a population of more than 5,000 recycle their materials. Pittsburgh established drop-off centers and then moved to bi-weekly curbside collection in 1990. for single-family dwellings, small apartment buildings with 5 or fewer units, and municipal buildings owned by the city. Recycling is mandatory in the city of Pittsburgh for both businesses and residents. Recycling is a cycle, it's a loop, so we don't want to see some linear thing where the trash or recyclables are ending up in a landfill. We want to keep reusing these materials. So it starts with collection and separation, that's our job. It goes to the MRF, the Material Recovery Facility or Recycling Center, where it's bundled and baled according to the material, sent to a factory, made into new products, and then off to stores to be purchased by consumers. If we do not participate in 1 and 5, collection and separation, and trying to purchase things made with recycled materials, this whole thing is going to fall apart. So I'd implore you to make every effort to purchase things that are made from recycled materials, and they're usually labeled as such. Some of the rules in the city of Pittsburgh revolve around when you can put
those items that we buy that are recycled, we put them back into recycling. Yes.
Well, that depends on what it is. So if you bought a glass bottle that had been made from recycled glass, yes. But if you had a fleece jacket that was made from plastic bottles, then the answer would be no, right? So, but I am going to ask you to save your questions for the panel because I need to hurry up and get through my spiel here so that you can ask your questions. I'm sure you've all come with things to say. Okay, so set out times no earlier than 6 p.m. the day before collection, and then no later than 6 a.m. the day of collection. The haulers are out there bright and early, and then we are asked to remove our recycling containers from the curb by 10 p.m. on the day of collection. Landlords are required to provide both recycling and trash containers for their tenants. Bins should be no larger, if you're using a bin, no larger than 35 gallons. And the recycling must be in something blue. So ideally, a blue bin. If you don't have a blue bin and you don't have access to a blue bin, then you can use the large blue bags. Again, bags are accepted but discouraged. And you'll see why later. So let's take a look at what's recyclable in the city of Pittsburgh. Mixed paper. Pretty much all your mixed paper can go into the recycling bin. Newspaper, magazine, books, magazines, catalogs, junk mail, phone books, paperboard, and corrugated cardboard. So lots of paper. These are a few of the items that we would not like to see in the recycling bin. The milk cartons, or whatever comes in the carton, but that type of a carton is not desired. Things like the Starbucks cups in the upper left, paper plates, and pizza boxes. Now, the problem, of course, with the pizza boxes is the grease and food that could be in them. Food contaminates the whole load. So you are welcome and encouraged to tear off the top of the box and recycle that, but the bottom is compostable, but can't go in your recycling bin. Shredded paper needs to be bagged. Please don't put it in your recycling bin. It has to go to a drop-off location to be recycled. There are drop-off locations that accept shredded paper in the East End, in Hazelwood, the West End, the Strip District, and right here in the parking lot of Construction Junction. And while I'm on that topic, take a look when you leave at the recycling bins as you're leaving the parking lot. They're on your left, and you can see all the nice signage that the city has put on these bins. Glass is still being collected in the city of Pittsburgh. They do ask that you remove the lids, and they want amber, green, and clear bottles and jugs, 3 gallons or less in size. But no windows, no Pyrex, definitely no ceramics, cups, plates. That type of material is not to be in recycling, drink and dinnerware. So just bottles and jugs. Soon the city is going to be rolling out these lime green bins at Construction Junction, Strip District, and a third location that is yet to be determined. So they'll be rolling out these nice big lime green bins, and we'll be able to take our glass there to have it recycled responsibly. Currently, PRC, the organization that I work for, is holding glass pop-ups every Saturday. We're in some community. Next Saturday is Mount Lebanon. It varies. We're all over the place in the county. And there's no fee at the glass pop-ups. Metal is great in your recycling. Please rinse it out. Food contaminates the entire load and is very problematical. But we don't want lids in with the recycling if they aren't attached to the can. So no loose lids, in other words. Plastic, bottles, jugs, and tubs, and the city would like you to take the lids off and dispose of the lids. Is that right, Theresa? Dispose of the lids? Okay. All right, so don't throw the loose lids in the bin. Just take them off and dispose of them in the trash. Bottles, jugs, and tubs. Yes to plastic bottles, tubs, and jugs, no lids, but we don't want the clamshells, the to-go containers. They're very often the #1 plastic. It's very brittle, causes problems in the recycling process. Keurig cups are a no. The coffee cup lids, all the little lids that they put on to-go drinks are not recyclable. Straws, plastic straws are not recyclable, and garden hoses should not be put out in the recycling. So no to clamshells and the Keurig cups. And you know, a lot of times people look at those plastic cups and say, oh, well, it's got a #1. They don't go in the bin. Unfortunately, they're trash. So that just tells us that's something to avoid, right? Have a reusable mug and avoid getting these single-use plastic products. Polystyrene does not go in the recycling. That's kind of been around for quite some time. So this is another product that the best thing to do is avoid buying it in the first place, right? So, you know, they say reduce, reuse, recycle. That's in order of importance. So reduce is #1. And so we want to try to get away from things that are going to be an issue later when we have to dispose of it. Large block foam that comes if you buy electronics or, I don't know, whatever. You've got these big block foams in the box. Those actually can go to the appliance warehouse on the south side. They have a condenser there. They turn them into things like crown molding, for example. These are some other things that you are not to put in your bin. This contaminates the load. So hangers, lids, glasses, shredded paper, wax paper, electronics, windows, light bulbs. None of those can go in a recycling bin. So, single-use plastics are a problem. They're usually not recyclable. We use them for a few seconds, and then what? So again, something to avoid. Use a reusable grocery bag. Have a reusable water bottle, coffee mug, so that we can try to get away from single-use plastics. In a restaurant, you can try to remember to say no straw before your drink comes with a straw already in it. It takes a while to get used to that. Your drink comes and you're just like, oh, I forgot. But after a while, you get used to saying, please hold the straw. And I think that's getting to be pretty common. So these are some things that we would not like to see in the bin. Bubble wrap and the plastic bag can go into the big dumpsters that they have outside of grocery stores. Any kind of plastic film can go into those bins for along with the plastic bags. And these are just some other things. I think we've pretty well covered this. No broken plastic toys, furniture. Just stick to these specific items that we've talked about that are recyclable. Aseptic containers are not recyclable. I know a lot of people seem to think that they are, but they are not. If you have children and you like to use those pouches, they do have reusable pouches that you can fill up with your applesauce or whatever you want to take with your child, but these are not recyclable. Please try to remember to take that reusable grocery bag with you to the store. Remember to tell them as you're checking out, no plastic bag, please. And this is why. So this is some machinery at a recycling center, and it's nice and clean. But when we have plastic bags mixed in with the recycling and it's going on the conveyor belt and through the sorting process, the bags get wrapped around the gears and just cause so many headaches for the recycling center. And there's another picture. So when those bags get wrapped around, which is happening consistently, they've got to stop the operation and clean out the machinery. So no bags inside your bin. If you're using a bin, please don't put materials in bags in the bin. If you're using a big blue bag for your recyclables, everything in that bag should be loose. Please don't put it in a bunch of other little bags and put those in the big bag. Soon, Pittsburgh is going to become, happy to say, collecting electronics and household hazardous waste down at 31st Street at the Pittsburgh Bureau of Environmental Services. So that's great news. And these are where some of the residential drop-offs are. There's one in the East End, one in Hazelwood, West End, Strip District, and here at Construction Junction. And like I said, the bins outside have the new signage. This is down under the 31st Street Bridge. The new signage is up. Cardboard only. This gentleman is putting in his bottles, cans, and jugs. He's got a bag, but he's emptying it in. So all of the materials will go into the dumpster, but not the bag. Some of the new signage. So, if you have an item and you're not sure if it's recyclable or not, when in doubt, throw it out. Don't put it in the recycling with hopes that, well, maybe it's recyclable, because then that's considered contamination, and it can mean that your whole bag or bin isn't going to get recycled. This is single stream contamination. So when we mix all of our recyclables together in the same container and then in the same truck, this is what happens. And this is one of the reasons why the China ban happened, is that we have so much contamination that it's next to impossible to sort all of this stuff out. And food and grease and drinks are all over the paper. Broken glass is mixed in with everything. So it's just a giant mess. And so things have happened globally and locally recently in the past couple of years that have kind of made us stop and re-examine our recycling process. And that's actually great news. It's an opportunity for us to, again, do it better and make recycling more meaningful and more efficient. Just more recycling contamination. So, what we can do to be part of the solution is to try to buy less prepackaged things, maybe buy things in bulk. Use the blue bin, put your material in loosely. You can bundle and tie your cardboard. Use the drop-off centers in between your collection week. And thank your workers. The refuse and recycling folks work very hard and very long hours. They're out there super early in the morning, so it's not an easy job. PGH.st, which is called Pittsburgh Street, I've been told, is a great website where you can get the schedules for recycling. You can sign up to get text and email reminders that it's, time to be putting out your recyclables and your trash. So you want to remember that. Pittsburgh Street. So the best thing that we can do is try not to generate so much waste, become an educated consumer, buy only what you need, and take responsibility for what you buy. So in other words, you want to be thinking about this stuff when you're in the store purchasing things about, oh, well, how am I going to get rid of this container when it's all said and done? So for example, you could buy a paperboard tray that has 10 juice boxes in it with 10 little plastic straws wrapped in some kind of plastic film, some kind of saran wrap, or you can buy a glass jug of apple juice and refill thermoses and bottles. So that would be the way to go, right? To avoid all of the waste. There are things that we can't put out curbside, and here are a few places where you may be able to take things. I would recommend calling these places first, making sure that they still accept these materials, and where they are, when they collect them, things like that. So, your aluminum and scrap metal can go to different scrap yards. Castriota is just one of them. Building materials can come here to Construction Junction. Electronics, PRC has collection events, our hard to recycle events. E-Loop is in export. Evolution E-Cycling is on the south side. And Best Buy, I believe if you are buying a television there, they will take your old television, I have been told. Tires, there are different places that will take tires, including PRC's collection events. Textiles can go to the Pittsburgh Center for Creative Reuse, which is in this same building right around the corner on Lexington, and Goodwill is still taking textiles. Blankets and pillows at animal shelters, and again the polystyrene to the appliance warehouse. Food waste. So AgRecycle is our big local commercial recycler. That's a great place to send food waste from a commercial establishment especially. Zero Waste Wrangler is a rather new organization in Pittsburgh. They will collect food waste as well. I think Shadyside Worms in Shadyside is also collecting food waste at your door, and they'll even bring you back worm compost later if you so desire. Used oil can go to Petromax or Buffalo Biodiesel. And plastic film, we've talked about taking that to the grocery store. Paper shredding, there are different places you can take it. Iron Mountain is one. And Model Cleaners takes metal hangers. Batteries, we can take our alkaline batteries to Batteries Plus. Rechargeables, Lowe's, Home Depot, and Best Buy. And car batteries to Advance Auto, scrap dealers, and or a hard to recycle collection. Again, Appliance Warehouse takes Freon appliances, toasters, vacuums. Again, call them first. They're on 6th Street in the south side. Another way to reduce the amount of material we're sending to our landfills is by composting. Our yard debris, our leaf waste, our green waste. The city has fall and spring curbside collections for that type of material. Leaves, branches, 4 inches in diameter or less, brush, grass. You have to cut your tree branches, bundle them, and tie them with something natural that's compostable. So a natural twine, a natural rope, and they don't want any branches longer than 5 feet. When you put your compostable out for the city, naturally you can't have any plastic, metal, wire, rocks, blocks, bricks, soil, or gravel. Just strictly the green waste, the leaf waste. There are year-round drop-offs for yard waste, grass, and leaves in the city, open Monday through Saturday, East End, Hazelwood, and West End drop-off centers. The city is taking Christmas trees. So last year they took over 21 tons of trees, 2,000 trees and 21 tons mulched.
And then we had the 4 mulch collection events in the spring that residents were able to go to forestry.
Okay, great. So you can tell them about that. Okay. Zero waste is another way to not produce waste, right? So composting, PRC has workshops. You can go to our website if you want to get a bin like that. I know there are people in this room who have this bin, backyard composting. It's a rodent-free bin. Packing a zero waste lunch, or if you have children, having them pack a zero waste lunch, all reusable items. So at the end of lunch, you're not throwing anything in the trash, you're just taking everything home to wash it and reuse it. And these are just some pictures of what a zero waste lunch might look like. Compostable serviceware at our office places, parties, things of that nature. Some compostable serviceware is compostable in a backyard bin, like the paper. Others that are the plant-based plastics are only compostable in a commercial composting operation. So if you have the compostable plant-based plastic forks, knives, and spoons, they're probably not going to break down in a backyard bin. It just doesn't get hot enough and maintain that temperature for a long enough period of time for it to break down. But Ag Recycle, for example, will take those materials and they will break down in their commercial operation. And these are just some web resources for you. There's also one, after the lights are on, you'll be able to see the pittsburgh.pa.gov/DPW/residential-recycling is a great place to go to get all the information that you'll need to recycle properly in the city of Pittsburgh. DP Recycling Hotline answers every day until about 4:30, and you can ask them, where do I recycle this? And the folks on the phone will look it up wherever you live across the state and let you know where you can get rid of that item in your locale. So, I want to thank you very much for your interest in recycling and hopefully your interest in reducing. And I am going to ask our panelists to come up, take a seat, introduce themselves. If you could tell us what department you're with and what you do there, and then we'll open it up to questions. I'm sure you all have questions for our panelists. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Theresa Bradley, the new recycling supervisor. Been on the job for about 6 months, been in the industry for over a decade. And I'll be honest, you know, when we talk about all these different materials, it is interesting. And in the past, we've seen the markets go up and down, but we've never seen anything like this. So we had a little bit of an education grant left over at Environmental Services. So Environmental Services, we are the ones that collect your biweekly recycling and also your weekly refuse and manage part of my job is to manage our drop-off centers. And so I just wanted to reiterate, the reason why we decided to put on these workshops is to be not only a bit more transparent, but to get the messaging out more in different mediums, different platforms. And I'm 38 years old. I mean, I'm not old school, but I'm pretty old, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Probably someone that's 19 would think I'm old, right? But I think this is great because this is like, and I just want to say the point of this is to open it up a bit more for dialogue. We do want it to be organized. So Theresa, I'll be addressing more of the materials and what Environmental Services is collecting. And then I believe Rebecca will do more of what they're doing in their department in terms of benchmarking or reduction, and then more working out of Erica Strasberger's office that sponsored the code changes to the waste and recycling that will be hitting the ground running after the outreach pretty soon here. So I don't want to take any more time up, but I'll let everyone else introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Kiernan. I'm a principal resilience planner with the city's Division of Sustainability and Resilience, which is housed in the Department of City Planning. Our office has been looking at the issue of zero waste. We have a roadmap to zero waste. We've been trying to figure out, you know, how do we get beyond just recycling, but also think about waste reduction tactics.
I'm Maura Egler. I'm Chief of Staff to City Councilperson Erica Strasberger. As Theresa mentioned earlier this year, our office, in conjunction with the Mayor's office, introduced and passed some changes to the waste and recycling code. It was kind of a big overhaul. And so we were just trying to kind of make it clear what is required, what is not, just clarify and clean up what was a really outdated code. And so we feel like it's a really great foundation and jumping off point for some of the more aspirational kind of zero waste goals that the city has.
So I guess we want to start, does anyone have any just general questions just to try to get the conversation started? Oh, there's a bunch. I'm going to go with this gentleman in the back. Actually, you look familiar to me. Sorry. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Yeah, what's that?
What's your name?
Howard.
Nice to meet you, Howard, again.
Several quick questions. Number one is obviously the numbers don't count anymore, it's the type of material. that correct?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I don't know if if folks in the audience saw the KDKA article, or it was an article, but also it came out on Monday, that we were highlighting, actually a recycling specialist, Amoye, was highlighting that we are getting away from the numbers, because if we say ones and twos, what else is a one? Well, those pesky brittle plastics. So this is a one, and this is a one. This is the desirable, marketable plastic. This is injection molding. Recyclers don't want this, because let's see, we're like this. It's brittle, can get caught up in the system. It's really tough to recycle again. And I also want to point out the confusion, honestly, seems to really come with the plastic stream. Everyone in the audience, does that seem about right? So yes, correct that this is a number 1 polyethylene. That is a number 1 polyethylene, the clamshell I just smashed. This is a number 2 high density polyethylene, another very desirable plastic. Another reason why we decided to do these workshops is to try to get the public to understand that these are commodities. We need to start looking at them that way. You might notice at the drop-off centers, we have new signage, and what we're piloting right now is not only sometime this month, we will have, as Nancy was mentioning in the presentation, separate glass roll-offs. We are not at this point, and even in the next couple years, removing glass from curbside. I just want to make that clear, because we are the city of Pittsburgh, and I understand the Shaycog and surrounding communities have done that. It's highly expensive to process, though. But if we're moving towards zero waste and something that doesn't leach and something that is recycled, can be recycled over and over again, we're committed to do what we can for Pittsburgh residents to keep this in the stream. So this, yes, all these materials right here, yes, can go in your bin. So yes, we're moving away from saying, we're talking more about the shapes. So we're saying, we like to say these are neck bottle plastics. So if it's a neck bottle shape, and a lot of you got this new beautiful flyer that Blender we're working with, the city of Pittsburgh, to create, and on the flip side, tips and things like that, and what you can do to be part of the solution. This is another good one. Oh, what I wanted to mention, this is actually downcycled. So as Nancy was mentioning in her presentation, yes, we put it into our single stream system. We say it's recycled. When it comes to these type of plastics, they're not a fully closed loop solution. So they are made into the textiles, made into carpets, made into fleeces, which generally, in its end life, you can't recycle again. Similar to your Giant Eagle, and I like to use Giant Eagle, no, I shouldn't use branding, grocery bags. So your grocery bags, you can, yes, take it back, and we encourage that, not to put extra bags in your curbside, in the curbside program, if you are a city of Pittsburgh resident, because it not only, it just, as Nancy was mentioning, kind of gumps up the system and things like that. But those bags actually are made into, has anyone heard of Trex lumber? You might see it at Home Depot or Lowe's, so something similar to that. Again, in its end life, oh yes, it lasts a long time, don't get me wrong, but that plastic lumber wouldn't be recycled again. So this is good. This is good as well. Oh, the tubs. So number 5, number 5, polypropylene. One of my favorites, actually. The reason why, you can reuse it. Generally doesn't leach. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but a lot of plastics, not only do they become problematic in the environment, you've probably seen on the news lately. These actually, I always encourage people to reuse them, and then if you, Whole Foods actually takes these as part of their Gimme 5 program. The one on East Liberty, they do not accept these, but the one on the South Hills, they do accept them. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of Preserve, the Preserve toothbrushes and razors. Those will be made into that as well. But the city is, with our current contract, accepting polypropylene number 5 tubs. So I'm going to say yes. I'm sorry, what is your name, ma'am?
Yes, even though we're not counting the numbers, right, Theresa?
Yeah, I'm just because I kind of know the jargon and stuff. Sorry, I should backtrack here. I apologize. Yes, we're not focusing on the numbers, but I tend to speak in numbers a little bit just to kind of give context. This is actually a reusable container. My daughter doesn't drink that much milk, and we always get the question, folks are like, what do we do with those pesky cartons? And I'm like, yeah, well, we don't take them because there is a little bit of a market, but our material recovery facility is not retrofitted to take, say, one of these guys. And these are becoming very popular, right? Your soups, they don't leach, coconut, milk, water, all that jazz. So we do not accept these. So there's that, but then also these. I'm just gonna kind of move this stuff over. Of course, your mixed paper. Any type of can is fine as long as it's empty. We're fine with that. Just pull this off. There you go. So, any other questions?
Pardon me, can I just interrupt for 1 second? I just wanted to remind you folks, could you please repeat the question because the cable crew won't have the questions unless you repeat them before you answer. Thank you.
So far, we had a question about numbers, so we answered that, hopefully, and then we had a question about tubs. But this gentleman, you've been waiting, sorry.
Okay, Toby, I'm still using plastic bags for garbage. When we first moved to the city, I remember the refuse collectors would go into the backyard, take your garbage can with all the juices and everything, pour it into a burlap sack, rub it up, throw it over their shoulders, you know, and bring it out to
the 80s. No, I went to the 80s. I know.
Horrible for the men. I mean, it's a horrible. And so I still package my garbage in these grocery bags, you know, the refuse. Now in Savannah, Georgia, they give people big containers that you roll out to the curb, and it's like a fork truck on the truck. We'll pick up the container.
Go Savannah. No.
Pardon?
Go Savannah. Yeah.
And that would be something acceptable, but I don't see anything acceptable other than putting garbage in the plastic bag.
And sorry, what is your question, sir?
So what do you do? What do you do with garbage?
Sorry, is your question more of what is the city of Pittsburgh doing to look at potential alternative containers?
How about that? That sounds good.
I don't want to keep hogging the mic here. Yes, up until the 80s, environmental services, it's called burlapping.
Yeah.
And we're probably the last city in the United States, mid-sized city, to do that. You just put all your material in, and then it would magically disappear. We'd bring a burlap sack in your backyard and dump it. So to answer the question more about the code and the leak-proof bags and things like that, I think I'm going to pass over this way if you feel comfortable more. I just don't want to. I don't want to keep hogging the mic here, but maybe talk about why it's important, I think, for City of Pittsburgh residents to continue using a leak-proof bag and the containers, and why did Erica's office move in that direction too?
Okay, so I guess I'll speak to some of the changes that we made in the code to clarify that you do have to use a plastic bag. I mean, you don't have to use a plastic bag, but you do for garbage because it's a public health issue. You know, it's we also made the change that when you're storing your garbage on site, not when it's out for collection, but when you're storing it on your property, you have to have it in a closed, tight-fitting bin with a tight-fitting lid, so that to discourage rodents and other smells, contamination from kind of spreading around the neighborhood. So we're really trying to emphasize the bags and the containers for garbage, just to keep everything kind of neat and tidy as much as possible. But the leak-proof container, the leak-proof bags are, again, to kind of keep liquids from, leaching out into the street or into your property. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we did make that change.
Really?
Yeah.
At this point.
For now, yeah.
I don't know what the other, I mean, that's pretty much industry standard if you're, sorry. the gentleman was wondering if there's anything. So a lot of municipalities have gone to a automated cart-based system. Savannah, Georgia, St. Louis, San Francisco. Most cities are in that direction. Now, if you look at Philadelphia, still not the case. If you look at New York, still not the case. Why? We are old cities. It would be, we could maybe get some automated trucks to have that arm come out and you'd have your big, beautiful bin and, you know, dump it in. Not only are we not there yet, but we just don't have that, the infrastructure in place, like also to even drive that train in that direction. All I can speak on behalf of is more of what we're trying to do as a city to move in terms of recycling, specifically recycling, move away from the blue bag and what we have right now, or we have a grant, and you probably have seen all over the news, to issue more blue bins. So what I would like to focus on more is just not only cleaning up our stream, getting the proper information out to the public, but is also like when you flip this backside of this container, yes, the city of Pittsburgh is still collecting blue bags. However, as you saw in the presentation tonight that Nancy was mentioning, when it says bins please, we really want to shift and move away from that direction. And some folks are like, well, why isn't the city issuing everyone a blue bin? Not only is it highly expensive, we have ran the numbers. However, we are looking at grants, multiple grants, and we're talking in the mayor's office right now about how we can drive that train in terms of recycling in that direction. But it is not only highly expensive, but I just like to encourage folks to, I mean, even when folks call our recycling office, we're encouraging the blue bin, putting material in loosely. And if you were to buy hefty bags, like I think you get like maybe 20 in a box, the blue bin pays for itself in 1 year. And then you're not worrying about all the icky stuff, so.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused because a couple weeks ago I saw an article in the Post-Gazette. I don't know if one of you would find a woman at the city level who's one of the directors or something. And she made it very clear that the place in Hazelwood cannot handle the single stream stuff that we're sending them, and that lots of times it never goes anywhere. And I was under the impression, in fact, right after that, I looked up glass recycling and I found a place out in
Mount Pleasant.
Beachview,
Okay.
near Beachview,
Okay.
that take glass. And my understanding is, I mean, I would like to know how does single stream work? I mean, why is single stream? I don't believe single stream works.
And should we take the glass out?
Yeah, so the question is, should we take glass out? Is single stream the big issue, the big elephant in the room? Single stream, ladies and gentlemen, in the next couple years will continue to be the norm in the city of Pittsburgh. And if you go to the drop-off centers, and what I'm trying to accomplish with that in the short amount of time I've been here is to start looking at source separation again. Yeah. We're not going to be able to do that for the entire city, but we can give better options. And so what we're piloting right now, on Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, if you use any of our drop-off centers, for cardboard and mixed paper, we were awarded a contract with Royal Oak. And so that is a separate truck. I know a lot of you have used the construction junction drop-off for many years, and you've seen one truck picking up everything and commingling it. Why were we doing it at that point in time? Even though we're saying, put your newspaper here, put your stuff there. Because the markets were good. But since the markets aren't so good, we are looking at different ways to not only educate the public on what we want to see in the curbside bin by utilizing our drop-offs as a platform. And I also want to mention that we are very fortunate that the city of Pittsburgh still has drop-off centers. Most places in the United States, some places in the United States have halted their program altogether. We don't want to do that. So we have to look at things smartly. But also to answer your question, we are told by our vendor, Recycle Source, that he swore on his mother grave that material is not going to landfill. So, correct, yeah. Now, you might see mounds of bags mixed in with stuff, and that's why we're here educating, and that's why we're being more transparent and saying really what we want to move towards as a city.
If I'm not mistaken, he has to hold on to until he has someone who wants to purchase
Correct.
it, right?
Yeah, and they have to also track their sale of recyclables, and believe me, I'm getting that information, so.
Another question?
So I've got two questions. One, when are the separated glass ones coming here?
When are the separated glass bins coming? They are sitting right now in a parking lot. That photo that you just saw, I just sent that to Nancy Martin yesterday, and we're hoping by the end of this month.
Great. And my second question is the clamshell.
Yep. That was really never recycled in the first place.
What lobbying is being done to the goals of the world or to all of the chicken processors that put their chicken in those into the halfway?
So what on the corporate level, what is being done? I think that's kind of what your question is.
Right, so that they don't, these producers, these food producers don't.
Are you part of the Zero Waste PA, or do you know about that a little? I'm going to let Rebecca and don't want to keep over.
So, I mean, I think the question is what kind of lobbying is being done about clamshells and the producers of some of this plastic. So, I mean, I think the best thing that we can do as consumers, as private residents, is that, you know, we can make it known to these producers that we don't want them to be putting their products in this plastic, right? That has no reuse after it. There are some zero waste bills at the state level, and one of them does include making the producers responsible for the plastic. I don't know how far that will go, but I would think that if there's public support and if you're really interested in this, I would encourage you to look at what's at the state level and you know, lobby yourself, call up your elected officials.
And that is, that is a Zero Waste PA. If you just Google Zero Waste PA, you'll see a menu of many bills: bottle bill, single-use plastic bans, straws, I mean, you name it. So citizen action, if you're interested in that.
Along those lines, we vote with our dollars, so we want to try not to buy these products. And also, like she was saying, call your store, tell them you don't want it. Call Dole and whoever is packaging it and let them know you don't want the packaging. But in the meantime, try to buy in bulk, try to find things that aren't packaged that way.
You want to talk about the giant eagle?
Tom?
Go ahead, Tom.
Two questions. So I didn't quite hear the answer. Does it help the whole thing if I bring my glass to this thing here instead of putting it in the bin?
Once our glass roll-offs are in place the end of June, will it help? Will you be part of the solution to source separate your glass at one of our big, bright green, lime green glass only roll-offs? Yes. It's going to stay local. So it's going to go, you come here, you drop your stuff off. I'm using this as an example. It will go to Superior Mulch LLC and McKees Rocks. We're under contract with them. Then it'll go to, is it Mount Pleasant? Mount Pleasant to be made into another bottle again.
And the other one I have is this question about the plastic bags. So at the co-op, I get these sort of flimsy, I think they're like corn-based, just maybe it looks like you could eat them if you were really hungry. But you could put your, and you use it. Are those, I mean, is that at all worth it?
Compostable, but they're not at home.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but if I put my trash in it, is that any different from putting it in?
You want to take this?
I don't particularly know about those specific bags, Nancy, maybe if you do, but I know that most of the plastics or the non-plastics that are made from corn, right, so they're the compostable plasticky looking things, are actually just coated in real plastic. And so they don't really break down all that much in the compost. They definitely won't break down in your backyard composter, but they're hard to break down in like the larger composting operations. The best thing that you can do is use a reusable container. So just refusing any, so if it's compostable or whatever, you know, just refusing it. The paper ones are good.
My garbage can in the kitchen.
You talk about the methane in landfills?
Do you know about that? I don't know about those.
Well, what could it hurt? If you're already lining it with plastic, the compostable plastic isn't going to be worse. Whether or not it breaks down in a landfill is kind of immaterial because that landfill's full of stuff that is not going to break down and it's going to be there for 100 years. But I've heard different stories for the backyard composters. Some people at my composting classes tell me that those thin bags do break down, and I don't know. I'm testing it in my own bin now.
If anyone wants to learn about compostable plastics, you can see me afterwards. I don't want to get in a huge discussion, but when they do break down in the landfill, they can cause methane, which is 21% more potent than CO2 in the atmosphere. So I think your question is more of like, okay, so I go to the grocery store and they have these items, these alternatives, right? And you think as a consumer, you're making those better choices because it's quote unquote green. There's a lot of greenwashing out there, and I think that's why we want to continue this conversation dialogue as a platform to get the proper education out.
In the white t-shirt?
You use a plastic bag for your trash.
Hi, I have two questions. I just moved back from Denver after 15 years.
So progressive.
Life is a lot different.
Yes.
So just the simple questions I'll ask. Can we have more than one of the blue recycled containers? Because two of us will go through more than one in a week.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, but your purchase on your own. So yes, you may have, yes. So the question was, as a single family home, may I have more than one blue container under 35 gallons? Yes.
Okay. My second question is, should we be crushing our bottles, cans, jugs, aluminum?
It is not recommended in the industry to smash your can because once it goes through the material recovery facility, it actually could make it into the paper stream. Keep it whole. Sorry, I didn't. The question was, should I crush my cans and bottles and stuff?
Green.
Gentleman in the Pittsburgh Pittsburgh hat.
Yes. I would suggest that having to drive to a glass collection center to recycle your glass is not very efficient because of the amount of gasoline involved and the emissions from your car. I lived in Sweden, and in every city in Sweden, in every town in Sweden, in every small community in Sweden, everybody was within 2 blocks of glass recycling bins.
Yes.
Plastic recycling bins, bins for each color of glass that are painted of the color of glass, so it's really not too difficult. You really don't have to read to be able to know which color to recycle in. Sweden can do it. They've been doing it for 30 years.
Correct.
Within 2 blocks. You walk down and you deposit your glass. Why can't the city of Pittsburgh do something as simple as that?
Why won't the city of Pittsburgh look more of like kind of progressive communities that have been having zero waste goals since the 1980s and 90s to offer more source separated options to residents? We're starting that conversation now. So we're going to start with our drop-offs. That one that Nancy had on there, to be determined. We're looking at the South Hills as another option. These things don't happen overnight. And what I like to stress about zero waste, that it truly is a journey. And someone who's been in the industry for a long time, a former zero waste consultant, I do want to stress that anything that you suggest or say, I really feel you, because it's higher and better use of materials, right? And so if you're compacting everything into one, it's more difficult. So to answer your question though, it wasn't really a question, but you were commenting about driving your glass to drop-off center. I would argue that if we did a life cycle analysis of taking this bottle, someone driving from Hazelwood and putting it in there to then be taken to McKees Rocks to be dumped once a week, to be picked up to take to Mount Pleasant, less greenhouse gas emissions, I would argue, that would go into that process, because once this gets mixed in with the paper and goes to our recycling facility in Hazelwood and makes speckled paper and makes a lot of other issues, the glass has to be cleaned up. It has shredded, it has paper in it, it has bottle caps in it, and it still goes to the same facility to be cleaned up. So.
Sure. We have excellent people at Carnegie Mellon who do complete life cycle analysis. I would like to encourage you to use some of the project courses that are taught that do full life cycle analysis to deal with this very problem.
I'm going to have Rebecca Kern answer this. We actually are actively doing that.
So we've been working, so we've worked with Alcoa has done analyses for us. We worked with the, we had 2 capstone projects with Carnegie Mellon University's Hines College this year. So one of them was focused on waste benchmarking. So one of the issues that we have with the commercial sector is that we don't pick up from the commercial sector. So we're not actually sure of the exact numbers of what's going to landfill. So in our zero waste target, it's really hard to figure out if we're actually going, moving the needle on zero waste if you can't measure it, right? So that was one project. Another project that we had was about cleaning up the waste stream from our special events. So those are both really successful projects. We tap into CMU and Pitt. Pitt is looking to do a Sankey diagram so that we can see what our waste streams are and then where they're going afterwards, so that we can start to kind of close the loop. So there's this idea of circular economy. So if you think about the way that our system, our consumer system goes today, it's an extractive industry. We use something, we throw it away. That's the end of it. Some of it gets recycled. In a circular economy system, everything, that loop is closed, and every waste stream has, a reuse to it. So we worked with, and our office at least has extended our capacity through fellows. We have a SCA fellow that's focused on zero waste. So it is a really good resource, and we're tapping it as often as we can. A lot of our problems are focused on infrastructure. So physically, picking up the waste from extra locations is tough, especially in a city where we don't pay for our waste. So as a city resident, you never pay a garbage bill, you never pay a recycling bill. It's kind of wrapped up into our taxes. So that kind of strains our recycling and our waste pickup. So that's why we don't have all those extra accoutrements yet, right? So there are things that we're thinking about and mechanisms that we can pull focused on how do we pay for waste.
Another question? Yes?
Can you speak a little bit to contamination? I know if you have the bottom part of a pizza box, or if you have a clamshell, or if you have any number of examples of contamination, is your whole load not, or a plastic bag like the giant Eagle Target and plastic bags, is your entire load not used? Like, can you explain a little bit about contamination and how it's addressed once it gets to the next spot?
The question was addressing more of the contamination, and that's one of the reasons why we're focusing on the new signage at our drop-off centers, using that as a platform to make sure to educate Pittsburgh residents on not only what we are accepting, but why we are accepting it, and why we are getting folks to source separate more, and why we're getting folks to not put bags up here in Construction Junction. We don't want bags. We're starting this conversation. Really, this is kind of like this week or the past weeks. Really, I feel like we're launching this. But to really answer your question, anything over 15% at a material recovery facility is considered high. We are not there at 15%. We don't want to get there, but China has said we won't buy your mixed paper or your plastic unless it's 0.5% contamination. The city and county of San Francisco has the most state-of-the-art MRF, maybe in the world. They are at 1%. And I don't know if you've heard in the news, but Malaysia is now sending loads back. That's why we're trying to do the best possible job we can to educate folks in the city of Pittsburgh. We're just getting back to basics. No caps, no lids, just simple materials. Put them in loosely in a blue bin. And if everyone did that, it would just be a whole different picture. But really, to answer your question, loads aren't rejected. Nancy did a great job on her presentation when she showed it's called a star screen at the material recovery facility, every 2 hours they have to physically, it's human power, have to go down there and cut those plastic bags out. When the city of Pittsburgh started their curbside recycling program, they partnered with Giant Eagle. And it was to increase recycling, increase diversion, and it was a way to get materials from landfill in the most efficient at the time. It didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, but now, because the contamination is on a global scale, that's why we're having these conversations. And I guess sometimes they can be difficult conversations. Like, I mean, let's face it, you go to the grocery store and you're in a pinch, almost everything comes in these pesky little things. But that's why we're trying to educate folks on not only what we're doing on the city level, but what you can do as consumers to be more empowered. Oh, Tom again, right?
You just said
I don't want
that metal screw tops, you could do something with them?
So one of the things, it was kind of mentioned in the presentation, was what to do with metal screw tops. So lids, like, so you have a glass peanut butter jar, and then, yeah, so that's over 2 inches in diameter. So we have 3 scrap metal bins, and even Construction Junction down here has a scrap metal bin. I'm not encouraging you to go collect all your stuff and put it here, but as a Pittsburgh resident, utilize our drop-offs. Seriously, like, we have a scrap metal bin, so if you have a home improvement project, you have an old weight bench or something that you want to dispose of properly, put it in that bin. But yeah, you could save your
Where is it?
caps. Oh, I'm sorry. So 5th Division West End. Oh my goodness. We had it up there, 2nd and 3rd. So Hazelwood and Homewood.
Dallas Avenue.
Homewood place down here?
Yeah, so Dallas Homewood. Yeah.
No, they don't take scrap.
They have a scrap metal bin.
I'm just asking Jasper.
Oh, you just asked them? I will talk to the division supervisor for you. Yep. Yeah, because we work with American Steel Processing. I don't know if you saw the article that came out a couple weeks ago in the Post-Gazette about the contamination in the markets. But yes, at one point the city of Pittsburgh made $330,000 when we'd buy trucks. Last year we made $8,000. And that was for scrap metal. So.
The lady in the tan or sweater.
2 things quickly. I lived in a community that had those that gave everyone the recycling bins and had the automatic lifts. The unintended consequence of that was they were so unsightly. People have them like everywhere. They were out in front of people's yards. So if you ever go that route, please look into that carefully, because it's really like unsightly and they're just all over the place.
Wheeled carts, toter-based system, 35 gallons or less, you can use it in the city of Pittsburgh. 64 gallon, you probably had a 96 gallon. One of the big blue ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you get the garden hoses and all the crazy stuff, because you have a large bin.
And then the other thing is, what about enforcement? Where do we stand on that?
Did you want to speak of that a little bit more? I mean, I can't, I just don't, yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
That's your department.
Enforcement. So a couple years ago, we did get a compliance foreman. His focus right now, or has been, because of with the code changes, so the mayor signed the amended 619 code on March 28th. We're doing outreach the next 90 days, so we have to the end of June to make sure we get the proper education, out there. So to answer your question, yes, but we also, when everything does go into effect in July, we will have our foremen. So we have, our foremen, and then we have our drivers, and then we have our workers at Environmental Services. If you're not in compliance, you might receive, say, a door knocker or something like that. One of the things that we have removed, and this is going back to the source separation, higher and better use, and a lot of people probably aren't happy with this, but it's the shredded paper. That's the one thing in a material recovery facility that can stop the operation. So we have halted that as of January. You probably saw in your newsletter. You can take your shredded paper to one of our drop-offs. But what we're doing is, and I'm hoping this is the case, that if you put shredded paper out, you should get a door knocker saying that we no longer take it at the curb. I apologize if you have been putting your shredded paper out and thinking that's magically being recycled, it actually is being it will go in the refuse truck unless you take it to one of our drop-offs, because it is just, it's such a mess at the MRF.
So we've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll take a few more questions.
Can I just add one more thing about enforcement?
Okay, and then this woman here in the navy blue vest.
City budgeting is coming up. This is budget season, so there is a program called Potholes and Pierogies where you can show up and talk about all of the things that are really important to you that you think that the city should spend money on, and I would encourage you, if anyone thinks that enforcement of any nature, so I mean enforcing recycling at commercial venues, enforcing air quality or anti-idling, make sure that you show up at Potholes and Pierogies. I'm not sure of the date, you can look it up online, but that is a great place to get all of your budget requests in.
Excellent. And your question?
So I'm wondering if there are any plans to expand the number of curbside pickups of yard debris, which is currently only twice a year. And I always feel like I'm taking my life in my hands when I go to the second division drop-off, because there are huge trucks coming in and out of there. It's overwhelming sometimes.
So the question is the city of Pittsburgh looking to expand its curbside collection or yard debris? It's biannual, so it's twice a year in the fall and in the spring. We actually received this question from a reporter, and it was interesting. As of right now, the only thing that I can say about that is that we are not just in environmental services. We are talking collectively as a whole between different departments to even potentially pilot composting sites in the city. So we are looking for more ways to divert waste in the city of Pittsburgh that's produced in the city of Pittsburgh by Pittsburgh residents. And you could add, yes.
Yeah, just to add to that, one of the changes that we did make in the code was to add a section on composting and compost pilots. So there's actually a part in the code that enables the Department of Environmental Services to engage in a pilot for composting specifically. So they are enabled to do that now. There's also a section in there that composting was never mentioned in our city code before. So we actually did put in a section on kind of just basic regulations about household composting, kind of really clear guidelines of like size, proximity to nearby properties, that kind of thing. But the pilot is in the code, and it's we're enabled to do that. So
Howard?
I have three very concise questions that you could probably answer concisely. The first one is a lot of people, including us, have those open recycling baskets, and we leave them out. According to the code, they now have to be in sealed baskets, in sealed containers. Is that going to be enforced, number one? Number two, if we tie our newspapers, does it help them recycle the newspapers? And number three, when are they going to develop the regulations for the new ordinance? Because the regulations were enacted way back then.
All right, I'm going to start backwards. So it was, what about the waste regulations? When will the updated waste regulations, those dictate what materials the city takes on the commercial side and also the residential side? I'm hoping the end of June. And what we did with the code is we kept them separate. They were embedded and tied, intertwined at one point. The other question was, what was the middle? Oh yeah, the basket. So I'm going to bring that up because after, I always was under the impression that with the city of Pittsburgh, you must use a 35-gallon bin with a lid. So I personally would rather see someone use one of those baskets that's open. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm saying it, than the bag. But I think we're going to need to probably come together again and look at that.
They take them, but
we'll still collect your recycling, but it doesn't have a lid on it. I think that was what Howard was.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I think the biggest, the thing with the lids is really geared towards waste and garbage. That is really targeted at, overflowing bins, trying to keep that under control. the foremen are not going to come around looking for open recycling containers, right? It's going to be in response to complaints about smells and overflowing. It's just to give some provisions around what is or isn't acceptable, mostly with garbage when you're talking about the lid. So,
one more thing. But the reason why you would want a lid on your recycling, though, is to keep it dry. So if your paper gets wet, then it's of no use to the municipal recovery facility.
So if you just keep plastic in those bins and keep paper covered, would that be a good alternative?
Something that's not paper. Keep something other than paper
We
in
have
the
a bunch of
bins.
those, because that's what was available before they started.
Yeah, so bundle cardboard and newspaper, I'm going to go with yes, and that's what we're addressing on here. It's more efficient for our workers to, gather that up and then toss that in the truck. And also, it could cause blight. That's another problem with the bags, is that you might be able to put 5 items in a, one of these bags, and then our trucks go by, or it's really light and it just blows down the street. Another reason why we want to use recycling bins. But yeah, it's just more efficient for us. I mean, it's all going in the same truck, but I would encourage folks to, really start looking and utilizing our drop-offs more, for the cardboard and newspaper. And I just want to address with the newspaper, I know some people were really freaked out. They're like, where's the newspaper bin at Construction Junction? Due to unfortunate, because of with the media and whatnot, and with the Post-Gazette, and we're, a lot of what's happening is like a lot of things are going online, and we just weren't getting the amount. Like, yes, people were utilizing, the drop off for the newspaper. I'm not saying that, but it was the only one in the city. So, and in terms of the revenue stream, when the newspaper and all the mixed paper is put into our drop offs currently, it again will go to higher and better use, and then that newspaper will be recycled again in the mixed paper, because then it's very clean. Right? So you're putting it all loose, even if it's mixed paper, it's just so much better than putting it and commingling it with something else. But let's party. Right? Yeah.